The emergency broadcast reached Earth on a Tuesday morning, crackling through the deep space communication array with desperate urgency. Ambassador Zethkar of the Velnari Coalition stood before the holographic transmitter, his elongated fingers trembling as he composed what might be his species' final message to the galaxy. "To any who receive this transmission," Zethkar began, his voice carrying the weight of billions of lives, "the Velnari Coalition formally requests immediate military assistance. Our worlds are under siege by the Korthak Empire, and our defensive capabilities have proven inadequate." The camera panned across the war room behind him, showing the devastating reality of their situation. Holographic displays flickered with red zones spreading across their territory like a plague. Fleet markers disappeared one by one as Korthak forces systematically destroyed everything in their path. On Earth, the transmission was received by the newly formed Terran Defense Authority. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in the command center, watching the aliens' plea with growing concern. Around her, analysts worked frantically to decode the technical specifications and battle reports embedded in the message. "Ma'am, we're getting real-time tactical data," reported Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, his voice tight with disbelief. "The Korthak Empire has been expanding for the past 50 years. They've conquered 17 different species, and now they're moving on the Velnari." Admiral Chen studied the tactical displays. The Velnari Coalition controlled 43 star systems, home to over 30 billion souls across 6 different species. They were philosophers, scientists, and artists who had united under principles of peaceful coexistence and technological advancement. Their military was designed for defense and peacekeeping, not the brutal warfare the Korthaks brought to every world they touched. "What kind of enemy are we looking at?" Chen asked. "Biological analysis suggests the Korthaks are a warrior species, Admiral. Physical examination of recovered battle footage shows they're approximately 9 feet tall, heavily muscled with natural armor plating. Their technology focuses on maximum destruction with minimal finesse." The transmission continued as Zethkar displayed images of Korthak brutality. Entire cities reduced to smoking rubble, refugee ships destroyed while fleeing, prisoners of war subjected to horrific experimentation. The Korthaks didn't just conquer, they obliterated every trace of the civilizations they encountered. "We have attempted diplomatic resolution for 18 months, Zethkar explained, his voice breaking slightly. The Korthak response was to accelerate their assault. They do not seek resources or territory, they seek only destruction. Our military analysts estimate complete defeat within 6 standard months unless we receive external assistance." Admiral Chen felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications. Earth had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and had been cautiously exploring the galaxy for less than a decade. They had made first contact with several peaceful species, but nothing had prepared them for this level of interstellar warfare. "Sir, there's more," Lieutenant Colonel Webb said, his face pale. "Intelligence indicates that after the Velnari fall, Earth is next on their expansion route. The Korthaks have been monitoring our radio transmissions for years. They know we exist." The weight of the situation settled over the command center like a heavy blanket. Earth had a choice: help a desperate alien coalition and potentially save billions of lives, or remain isolated and hope the Korthaks would somehow bypass their solar system. "We know little of your species," Zethkar continued in his message, "but our deep space monitoring has detected your rapid technological advancement and military development. We understand you call yourselves humans, and you inhabit what our scientists classify as a Class A death world. Perhaps beings evolved in such harsh conditions possess the warrior spirit necessary to stand against the Korthak threat." Admiral Chen paused the transmission and turned to her staff. The term death world wasn't unfamiliar. They had encountered it in previous alien communications. Most species in the galaxy evolved on worlds with stable climates, minimal natural disasters, and relatively peaceful ecosystems. Earth, With its violent weather patterns, tectonic activity, mass extinction events, and predator-heavy food chains, was considered an extremely hostile environment by galactic standards. Analysis of the military data, Admiral, reported Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, the TDA's chief xenobiologist. The Velnari military relies heavily on energy shields, long-range precision weapons, and tactical coordination. Very sophisticated, but they engage in warfare like a chess match. The Korthax fight like a hurricane they overwhelm through pure aggression and superior physical strength. What about their technology levels? Chen asked. The Velnari are actually more advanced in most areas: energy manipulation, faster-than-light communication, medical technology. But their weapons are designed to disable rather than destroy. They've been conducting what we would call gentleman's warfare for centuries. Admiral Chen resumed the transmission. Zethkar was now showing tactical breakdowns of failed defensive actions. Velnari forces would establish careful formations, create overlapping fields of fire, and attempt to outmaneuver their enemies using superior technology and coordination. The Korthax would simply charge straight through, absorbing tremendous casualties, but eventually overwhelming the defenders through sheer numbers and ferocity. "We have exhausted our strategic options," Zethkar admitted. "Our military doctrine emphasizes preservation of life and minimizing collateral damage. The Korthax exploit these limitations. They use our own humanitarian principles against us, forcing us to choose between tactical advantage and civilian casualties." The implications were clear to Admiral Chen. The Velnari were fighting a civilized war against an opponent who recognized no rules, no mercy, and no limits. Their advanced technology and superior tactics were meaningless when their enemies were willing to sacrifice everything for victory. "Ma'am, we're receiving additional transmissions," reported Communications Officer Riley Santos. Other coalition members are sending their own pleas for assistance. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. A new voice joined the transmission, a crystalline, musical tone that belonged to Ambassador Liss of the Ethereal Syndicate. Her species appeared as graceful, translucent beings who communicated through light patterns as much as sound. "Honored beings of Earth," Liss said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate directly with the human emotional centers. "We add our voices to the Velnari plea. The Korthax have begun deploying biological weapons against civilian populations. Entire worlds are being sterilized of all life. We face not just conquest, but complete extinction." The holographic display shifted to show the aftermath of Korthak biological attacks. Once thriving worlds reduced to barren wastelands, their atmospheres poisoned, their ecosystems collapsed. The Korthax weren't just conquering, they were preparing these worlds for their own colonization by eliminating every trace of previous life. Admiral Chen felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Earth's military was strong by human standards, but they had no experience with interstellar warfare. Their ships were designed for exploration and system defense, not for projecting power across dozens of light years. The Korthak Empire controlled hundreds of worlds and had been refining their war machine for generations. "Admiral," Dr. Hawthorne said quietly, "there's something else. The psychological profiles we've developed on both species suggest something interesting. The Velnari and their coalition partners are essentially prey species. They evolved from creatures that survived through intelligence, cooperation, and avoiding conflict. The Korthax are apex predators designed by evolution for hunting and killing." "And humans?" Chen asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "We're something else entirely. We evolved as persistence hunters on a world that tried to kill us every day. We're not prey, but we're not simple predators either. We're survivors who learn to use tools, tactics, and teamwork to overcome any threat. In galactic terms, we might be the only species that combines high intelligence with genuinely aggressive combat instincts." The transmission continued with increasingly desperate reports from across the coalition. The Korthax had accelerated their timeline, launching simultaneous attacks across 17 different systems. Refugee ships were fleeing toward the galactic core, but Korthak hunting packs were pursuing them, destroying vessels filled with children and elderly civilians. "Time is running out," Zethkar concluded his message. "We know this request asks much of a species we have barely met. But if the Korthaks succeed in destroying our coalition, they will turn their attention to the rest of the galaxy. Earth will eventually face this threat whether you act now or later. We can only hope that the legends are true that Deathworld species possess the strength to stand against the darkness." Admiral Chen turned off the transmission and looked around the command center. Every face showed the same mix of determination and uncertainty. Earth had achieved remarkable things in its short time among the stars, but this was beyond anything they had ever attempted. "Ma'am, what are your orders?" Lieutenant Colonel Webb asked. Admiral Chen stood up, her decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. Earth had spent centuries fighting wars against overwhelming odds, facing threats that should have destroyed civilization. They had survived ice ages, plague, natural disasters, and their own violent nature. If any species in the galaxy could stand against the Korthak Empire, it would be the one forged in the crucible of a death world. "Contact the President and the UN Security Council," she said firmly. "Tell them we have a situation that requires immediate attention, and begin mobilizing the fleet. We're going to show these Korthaks what Deathworld species are really capable of." The die was cast. Humanity was about to enter its first interstellar war, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council lasted 18 hours. President Maria Rodriguez sat at the head of the table, watching as military advisors, scientists, and diplomats debated humanity's first interstellar military intervention. The holographic displays showed the devastation spreading across Velnari space, each red marker representing millions of lives hanging in the balance. "The risk assessment is clear," General Harrison stated bluntly. "We're talking about deploying our entire deep space fleet against an enemy we know almost nothing about, to defend allies we met 5 minutes ago, in a war zone hundreds of light years from Earth." "And if we do nothing?" Dr. Sarah Kim, the UN's chief xenological advisor, countered. "The intelligence reports are unanimous the Korthaks will eventually reach Earth. We can fight them now with allies or fight them later alone." President Rodriguez studied the tactical projections. Earth's military had grown substantially since first contact, driven by the sobering realization that the galaxy was not the peaceful place they had hoped. The Terran Defense Fleet consisted of 47 warships, including 12 heavy cruisers and the flagship dreadnought TDF Indomitable. "What about our technological advantages?" asked Secretary of Defense James Wright. Admiral Chen activated the comparison charts. "Mixed bag, sir. The Korthaks have superior numbers and their ships are heavily armored. The Velnari have better energy weapons and shields. We fall somewhere in between, but with one crucial difference." She highlighted a section of the analysis that made several council members lean forward. "Human military doctrine," Admiral Chen continued, "is fundamentally different from anything else we've encountered in the galaxy. The Velnari fight wars like elaborate duels, formal, structured, with rules of engagement designed to minimize casualties. The Korthaks fight like berserkers, all aggression and overwhelming force. But humans, we fight wars like we're trying to solve a problem that needs to be permanently eliminated." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had spent millennia refining the art of warfare, developing concepts like total war, strategic bombing, asymmetric tactics, and combined arms operations. They had learned to use every advantaged terrain, weather, technology, psychology, and logistics to achieve victory regardless of the odds. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Colonel Webb said, addressing the President directly, "we've been analyzing Korthak battle footage for the past 12 hours. They're incredibly effective against the Coalition because they exploit a fundamental weakness the Coalition species fight to defend, not to destroy. He activated a holographic battle scene showing a recent engagement between Velnari and Korthak forces. Watch how the Velnari engage. They establish defensive positions, attempt to create killing fields, and try to outmaneuver the enemy while preserving their own forces. It's textbook military strategy for a rational opponent. The display showed Velnari ships moving in precise formations, their energy weapons firing in calculated patterns designed to disable Korthak vessels without destroying them completely. Now watch the Korthak response, Webb continued. The enemy ships ignored the tactical situation entirely, charging straight into the Velnari formations. Some were destroyed, but the survivors crashed into the defensive lines like guided missiles, turning a carefully planned engagement into a chaotic brawl where superior Korthak physical strength became decisive. They're not fighting to win territory or resources, Webb explained. They're fighting to exterminate. The Velnari can't adapt their tactics because their entire civilization is based on preservation of life. They literally cannot conceive of the level of destruction necessary to stop an enemy like this. President Rodriguez understood immediately. Humanity had no such limitations. Earth's military history was written in the ashes of total warfare, from Sherman's March to the Sea to the strategic bombing campaigns of World War II. When faced with an existential threat, humans had proven willing to unleash devastating force without hesitation. "What's our timeline?" the president asked. "The Korthak offensive will reach the Velnari core worlds in 4 months, Admiral Chen replied. "If we're going to intervene, we need to move within the next 30 days to have any chance of arriving in time." The debate that followed was intense, but brief. Every council member understood that Earth faced a simple choice act now with potential allies, or face the Korthak Empire alone in the future. The vote was unanimous. 3 weeks later, the Terran Defense Fleet departed Earth orbit in the largest military operation in human history. 47 warships, carrying 30,000 personnel, jumped to hyperspace with orders to link up with coalition forces and stop the Korthak advance by any means necessary. The journey took 12 days, during which Admiral Chen used every moment to prepare her forces for what was coming. Human military doctrine was adapted for three-dimensional space combat. New tactics were developed for fighting alongside alien allies, and psychological profiles were created for both the Korthaks and the coalition species. "Remember," Admiral Chen addressed her senior staff during the final briefing, "we're not just fighting to save the coalition. We're establishing humanity's position in galactic politics. How we handle this war will determine whether Earth becomes a major power or remains a minor player hiding in the outer rim." The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Velnari space to find a desperate situation. Coalition forces were in full retreat, their carefully organized defensive lines shattered by relentless Korthak assaults. Refugee convoys streamed past the human fleet, their ships overcrowded with civilians fleeing the advancing enemy. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Velnari command ship," reported Communications Officer Santos. Ambassador Zethkar appeared on the main screen, his relief visible despite his alien features. "Admiral Chen, your arrival is most fortuitous. The situation has deteriorated rapidly since our last communication." "What's the current tactical situation?" Chen asked. "The Korthaks have broken through our outer defenses and are advancing on 3 primary axes. Our forces are falling back to the Kepler 442 system where we hope to make a final stand. However, our military advisors estimate we have less than 48 hours before the position becomes untenable." Admiral Chen studied the tactical display. The coalition had assembled nearly 200 ships, but they were demoralized and scattered after weeks of continuous retreat. The Korthak fleet numbered over 400 vessels, advancing in 3 massive formations that seemed designed to overwhelm any organized resistance. "Admiral," Dr. Hawthorne said quietly, "we need to understand something about the coalition psychology. Their prey species they're hardwired to flee when confronted with overwhelming predatory behavior. The Korthax instinctively understand this and have designed their tactics accordingly. Chen nodded. And humans? We're persistence hunters. When confronted with a dangerous predator, our instinct is to study it, find its weaknesses, and then hunt it to extinction. The next few hours were crucial. Admiral Chen met with coalition military leaders, studying their defensive plans and battle records. What she saw confirmed her worst fears: the coalition was fighting a civilized war against an enemy that recognized no civilized limits. "Your defensive strategy is sound," Chen told the assembled alien commanders, "but it's based on the assumption that your enemy shares your values. The Korthax don't care about casualties, logistics, or even tactical advantage. They care about psychological domination." Ambassador Liss of the Ethereal Syndicate flickered with concerned light patterns. "Then what do you propose, Admiral Chen?" Admiral Chen activated her tactical display, showing the Korthak advance formations. "We stop thinking like defenders and start thinking like predators. The Korthaks have been winning because they're the only ones willing to fight without restraint. That ends now." The plan Admiral Chen presented to the coalition leadership was unlike anything they had ever considered. Instead of trying to stop the Korthak advance, the human fleet would attack their rear positions, targeting logistics and support vessels. Rather than engaging in formal fleet actions, human ships would use hit-and-run tactics designed to create maximum psychological impact. "You're proposing to attack civilian targets?" Ambassador Zethkar asked, his voice filled with horror. "I'm proposing to attack military targets that happen to be protected by the Korthak belief that enemies won't attack them," Chen corrected. "The Korthaks have been sending their supply convoys through safe areas because no coalition species would risk civilian casualties by fighting near populated systems." The assembled alien commanders exchanged uncertain glances. What Admiral Chen was describing wasn't just tactically radical, it was morally challenging for species that had built their entire civilization around avoiding unnecessary conflict. "But the risk to innocent lives," Zethkar protested, "is less than the certainty of extinction if we lose this war," Chen replied firmly. "The Korthaks have already shown they will commit genocide against entire species. We can fight by their rules, or we can watch our civilizations burn while maintaining our moral purity." The debate that followed was intense and emotional. Coalition leaders struggled with the concept of unrestricted warfare, while human officers tried to explain the harsh realities of fighting an enemy that recognized no limits. Finally, Ambassador Liss spoke, her light patterns dim with resignation. "Our people have faced extinction before, Admiral Chen. If your species possesses the strength to stand against this darkness, then we will follow your lead. But we ask that you remember the values we fight to preserve, even as you do what we cannot." Admiral Chen nodded solemnly. "We'll win this war, Ambassador, but we'll win it as humans, with all that implies." As the coalition forces prepared for what they hoped would be their final retreat, Admiral Chen and her staff worked through the night, planning an operation that would either save the galaxy or damn humanity's reputation forever. The Korthaks had awakened something they didn't understand: a species that viewed warfare not as an extension of politics, but as a problem that needed to be solved permanently. The war was about to take a very different turn. Operation Hellstorm commenced at Oro 300 Galactic Standard Time. While coalition forces conducted their final retreat toward the Kepler 442 system, Admiral Chen's fleet split into 12 independent strike groups, each targeting different aspects of the Korthak war machine. The aliens had been fighting a conventional war; the humans were about to introduce them to something far more devastating. Strike Group Alpha, led by Captain Maria Santos, aboard the heavy cruiser TDF Retribution, hit the Korthak supply depot at Vega 7. The enemy had established a massive logistics base in the system, confident that coalition forces would never attack a position so close to civilian populations. Target acquisition complete, reported Tactical Officer James Reed. 57 supply vessels, 23 fuel tankers, and approximately 40 defensive platforms. Captain Santos studied the tactical display. In the inner system, 2 inhabited worlds housed billions of Korthak civilians. Traditional coalition doctrine would never permit an attack in such proximity to non-combatants. "Launch the assault," Santos ordered. The human ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their railgun batteries already locked onto priority targets. Unlike the precision energy weapons favored by coalition forces, human kinetic weapons were designed for maximum destructive impact. The first salvo shredded the outer defensive perimeter before the Korthaks even realized they were under attack. "Enemy vessels attempting to form defensive screen," Reed reported. "They're positioning themselves between us and the civilian populations." "Exactly as predicted," Santos replied. "Execute pattern Delta." The human ships scattered into seemingly random attack vectors, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the Korthak defensive formations. Individual vessels darted in and out of the engagement zone, striking high-value targets and withdrawing before effective retaliation could be organized. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Korthak tactical doctrine was based on overwhelming force and frontal assault. They had no experience dealing with an enemy that refused to engage on their terms. Human ships struck like lightning, destroying critical infrastructure and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. "Admiral, we're receiving panicked communications from Korthak command frequencies," reported Communications Officer Davis. "They're calling for immediate reinforcement of all rear area positions." Captain Santos smiled grimly. "Phase 1 complete. Beginning withdrawal to rally point." Across Korthak space, similar scenes played out as human strike groups systematically dismantled the enemy's logistical network. The aliens had grown complacent after months of easy victories against coalition forces. They had never faced an enemy willing to attack anywhere, anytime, with complete disregard for traditional rules of engagement. Strike Group Beta targeted the Korthak communication relay at Proxima 3, using electromagnetic pulse weapons to create a dead zone spanning 3 star systems. Strike Group Gamma hit the primary shipyard at Rigel 5, launching nuclear torpedoes at the orbital construction platforms with devastating effect. The Korthaks had built their war machine on the assumption that enemies would fight predictably. Engaging in formal fleet actions where superior numbers and aggression would prove decisive. Human tactics shattered those assumptions, introducing concepts like asymmetric warfare, strategic bombing, and total war to a galactic community that had never experienced such brutality. "Admiral Chen, we're receiving urgent transmissions from Korthak Fleet Command," reported Lieutenant Colonel Webb aboard the flagship TDF Indomitable. "They're demanding to speak with our leadership under diplomatic protocols." "Put them through," Chen ordered. The main screen displayed a massive Korthak warrior, his natural armor plates scarred from countless battles. General Thakmor was the supreme commander of the Korthak invasion forces, and his expression showed a mixture of rage and confusion. "Human Admiral," Thakmor growled, "your actions violate every established law of warfare. You attack logistics positions near civilian populations. You target non-combat installations. You refuse to engage our fleets in honorable battle." Admiral Chen's response was coldly professional. "General, you launched a war of extermination against peaceful species. You deployed biological weapons against civilian populations. You offered no quarter and accepted no surrender. We're simply fighting by the rules you established." "This is not warfare," Thakmor protested. "This is terrorism." "No," Chen replied, her voice carrying the weight of human military history. "This is what happens when you threaten a death-world species. We don't fight wars to prove superiority. We fight wars to eliminate threats permanently." The communication ended abruptly as Thakmor terminated the connection. human intelligence analysts noted increased chatter on Korthak military frequencies as their leadership struggled to adapt to an enemy that operated outside their tactical comprehension. Meanwhile, the coalition forces had successfully withdrawn to the Kepler 442 system, where they established defensive positions around the heavily populated core worlds. But instead of pursuing immediately, the Korthak advance had stalled as commanders pulled forces back to protect their suddenly vulnerable supply lines. "Admiral, we're receiving updates from all strike groups," Webb reported. "Operation Hellstorm has exceeded all projections. Korthak logistics capacity has been reduced by 67%, and their advance forces are experiencing critical supply shortages." "And their response?" Chen asked. "They're adapting faster than anticipated. Korthak fleets are being recalled from the front lines to protect rear area positions. But this creates a different opportunity." Admiral Chen studied the tactical display, watching as red markers representing Korthak forces began pulling back from the coalition defensive lines. The enemy was learning that human warfare meant no target was safe, no position secure. But in doing so, they were abandoning the overwhelming numerical advantage that had made their advance unstoppable. "Contact Coalition Command," Chen ordered. "Tell them it's time for Phase 2. The second phase of the human strategy was even more audacious than the first. While Korthak forces remained scattered to protect their logistics network, Admiral Chen proposed a direct assault on their primary fleet base at Altair 4. The plan was simple: storm the most heavily defended position in Korthak space and cripple their military capacity permanently. "Admiral, this is madness," Ambassador Zethkar protested when Chen presented the proposal. "Altair 4 is defended by over 200 warships and orbital fortification platforms. It's the most secure position in their entire empire." "Which is exactly why they won't expect us to attack it," Chen replied. "The Korthaks are repositioning their mobile forces to protect against more raids. Their primary base is actually more vulnerable now than it has been in years." The coalition military leaders exchanged uncertain glances. The human proposal violated every principle of sound military strategy. It was a frontal assault against a fortified position by numerically inferior forces. "How do you propose to overcome such odds?" asked General Velthar of the Crystalline Hegemony. Admiral Chen activated her tactical display, showing detailed analysis of the Korthak base defenses. "The same way humans have overcome impossible odds throughout our history, we change the nature of the game." The plan Chen outlined was breathtakingly audacious. The combined human coalition fleet would approach Altair 4 using a technique no galactic military had ever attempted: a simultaneous hyperspace emergence at point-blank range to the planetary surface. "The risks are enormous," Dr. Hawthorne warned. "Emerging from hyperspace so close to a gravity well could destroy half our fleet before the battle even begins." "And if we succeed?" Chen asked. "If we succeed, we'll appear inside their defensive perimeter with no advance warning. The Korthak orbital platforms will be useless. Their weapons are designed to engage targets in deep space, not ships practically skimming the atmosphere." The combined fleet assembled in the Kepler 442 system, 237 ships from 6 different species united under human tactical command. Coalition vessels were integrated into human formations, their advanced energy weapons complementing human kinetic systems in ways neither side had previously imagined possible. "All ships report ready for hyperspace transit," announced Fleet Captain Rodriguez aboard the TDF Devastator. "Admiral, we await your orders." Admiral Chen looked around the bridge of the Indomitable, seeing the same mix of determination and uncertainty that had marked every crucial moment in human military history. They were about to attempt something unprecedented in galactic warfare: a direct assault on a fortress world using tactics that had never been tested in interstellar combat. "Signal all ships," Chen ordered. "Operation Death Strike is authorized. Show them what Deathworld species are capable of." The fleet vanished into hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes of billions and the reputation of humanity among the stars. 30 minutes later, they emerged from the dimensional void directly above Altair 4, their weapons already locked onto target. The battle that followed lasted 6 hours and changed the course of galactic history. Human tactical doctrine, combined with coalition technology and the desperate courage of species fighting for survival, proved unstoppable against an enemy that had never faced truly coordinated resistance. The Korthak orbital platforms, designed to engage enemies approaching from deep space, were helpless against ships that appeared within their defensive perimeter. Coalition energy weapons, guided by human targeting systems, systematically destroyed the enemy's ability to coordinate resistance. When the last Korthak vessel surrendered, Admiral Chen surveyed the wreckage of what had been the most powerful military installation in the galaxy. The message was clear: humanity and its allies would not be intimidated, would not be conquered, and would not show mercy to those who threatened innocent life. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from Korthak commanders across the Empire," reported Webb. "They're requesting immediate cessation of hostilities and negotiation of terms." Admiral Chen nodded, feeling the weight of history settling around her. Humanity had entered galactic politics not as a minor species seeking acceptance, but as a major power that had proven its ability to defend civilization itself. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "The war is over. Let's go home." The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about Deathworld species, and it would not soon be forgotten. The Korthak Empire would spend generations rebuilding, while the coalition worlds flourished under the protection of their new human allies. Earth had found its place among the stars, and that place was as the guardian that others called when the darkness grew too deep to bear alone.